Throughout the series, we've seen various pairings between all the main six, but we haven't seen an episode that made Applejack and Fluttershy the main focus before. In fact, the only episode that even came close was when Applejack and Fluttershy were dealing with the beavers during Keep Calm and Flutter On. Honestly, I've really wanted to see an episode that makes these two the main focus, so I was really looking forward to seeing it when I first read the synopsis. But just how well does the story hold up? Let's take a look. As the episode begins, we see Applejack getting excited about apple bucking day, but she is rather disappointed when she discovers that the apples are all mushy due to the returning fruit bats. But apparently these are not the ordinary fruit bats that we saw during Apple Family Reunion. These are a much more voracious species known as vampire fruit bats. I do like to see that the writers are showing a bit more continuity here when the main six talk about the previous episodes. We have Applejack referencing Apple Family Reunion. We even have Rainbow referencing her love of cider from Super Speedy Cider Squeezy 6000, and the callbacks to older episodes don't stop there. Fluttershy is trying to be positive as usual, believing that she could make a difference if she could just talk to the bats. But apparently this is her first encounter with vampire fruit bats, and she doesn't understand their language. Applejack starts calling these bats monsters, which naturally puts Fluttershy on the defensive, and their discussion leads into a new song making Applejack and Fluttershy the main focus. It kind of reminds me of the Find a Pet song between Rainbow and Fluttershy. Both pieces seem to focus more on speaking their lines rather than singing them. But while I did like the music and the harmonies from the Find a Pet song, this one doesn't really stand out quite as much. If you were to remove the words entirely and just listen to the music, would it really be a standout piece? Even if you remove the music and just listen to the main six sometimes speaking and sometimes singing their lines, would you really think it would be all that memorable? I may not have liked all the lyrics from the Hearts as Strong as Horses song, but the standout percussion and the lovely harmonies really helped in getting me to enjoy the piece. With this song, there really doesn't seem to be anything that impresses all that much. But who knows, maybe if I listen to it a few more times, I might find something more to enjoy about it. At the very least, though, it does help in explaining the conflict going on between Fluttershy and Applejack. I just think that they could have accomplished this just as easily if they had a discussion about it rather than trying to make a song out of it. Although I do like hearing Pinky singing Fruit Bat Roundup, so there's another callback to previous episodes. Applejack talks about how Granny Smith's family had to ration their apples for a season because of the bats, showing a reference to Family Appreciation Day. We see Rainbow getting upset that there might not be a cider season, but it starts getting more intriguing when Twilight is telling Fluttershy to use the stare. Fluttershy doesn't want to use her stare unless in dire circumstances. This makes for a rather interesting conflict in that Applejack has a legitimate reason to want the fruit bats off of her property in order to save the crop, and Fluttershy believes that keeping them there will lead to a greater orchard in the future. And we can see that the rest of the main six are all pressuring Fluttershy into doing something that she doesn't want to do. This makes for a nice build-up into the lesson at the end. Pinky wears some fruit in her hair, and we actually get to hear some fun background music to go with it that is actually relevant. Rarity in a full suit provides some light comedy when she starts panicking. Fluttershy begins using the stare under duress, and we get another callback to previous episodes when we see Twilight using a similar spell to what she used on the Parasprites during Swarm of the Century. Seriously, this episode probably has more callbacks than any other episode I've seen thus far. Although when Twilight is using her spell on the bats while Fluttershy is still using the stare, I could already tell that Fluttershy was getting affected by the spell. I admit that in the early parts of this episode, I had thought that they were going to focus on this conflict of what would be the right course of action. And even though that was a lot of what the episode was about, I honestly did not see this next part coming. Bat ponies are officially canon. This finally explains just how Luna was able to get bat ponies to draw her chariot during Luna Eclipsed. There is actually a spell that changes a Pegasus's physical appearance. We even hear Rarity calling her Flutterbat. I love seeing this new design on Fluttershy, and even all the references to Batman that came with it. Each of the main six get a signal to put into the sky with their own cutie mark, and there was even a short bit with Flutterbat hanging in the sky with the moon right behind her. This makes for some really entertaining scenes. Okay, Twilight summoning a computer screen in mid-air? This is new. But even though it seems rather bizarre to suddenly see this kind of magic, it actually made me laugh, so I'll give it a pass. I could already tell that they'd have to use the huge apple they showed earlier, but using mirrors to trap Flutterbat in her own stare was really clever. This whole set of scenes with Flutterbat is fantastic. Applejack talks about how seeking a short-term solution can actually lead into a long-term problem, and while that is a good lesson to learn, I don't think they did enough in this episode to show Applejack learning it. But thankfully, we do get Fluttershy talking about how you shouldn't let your friends pressure you into doing something that you don't feel is right. That is an even stronger lesson that actually did get the proper build-up for it. Whether Fluttershy will remember this lesson in the future, or whether her friends will keep on pressuring her into doing these kinds of things, I really don't know. But it is good to see that they are at least talking about it. Wait. Fluttershy still has a fang? Does that mean that she isn't fully cured? Will this ever come back? This seems to be a recurring theme with Season 4 episodes. We got those few seconds with the Shadow Pony during Castlemania, we saw the comic book disappear at the end of Power Ponies, and now we get this bit with Fluttershy having lingering effects of being a Bat Pony. Will any of these things ever be mentioned again? I mean, I hope that all these little tidbits will show up sometime in the future, but at this point I'm still getting the sense that the writers are just going to leave these questions hanging. Overall though, this was a fun episode for me. I admit that the early parts weren't all that engaging, particularly when it came to the song, but the overall conflict is believable. The many callbacks to previous episodes were a nice touch. There were moments in the episode that legitimately surprised me, and I really like seeing a relevant lesson from a character that really needed that kind of growth. Though there may not be anything here that adds to the overarching storyline for the season, I'd say that Bats made for a fun little slice of life story. But what do you think? Does the conflict between Applejack and Fluttershy seem natural to you? Did you enjoy all the callbacks to previous episodes? Do you think that making Fluttershy into a bat will be showing up at any point later on? Do you think the lesson, or rather lessons, really fit with the story? I would like to hear your thoughts about bats, and here's to looking forward to even more Bat Pony art in the near future. I am DRWolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.